So I will grab Joker,
Yep.
Wonder Woman,
Yep.
Flash. Now, is that Penguin? Is that from Kenner Superpowers? It's not the Toy Biz one?
There I am watching Tony's latest video on Analog Toys about this amazing toy store in Australia, and he walks up to the Superpowers case and starts buying figures. And he asks the owner of the store, is that the Toy Biz version of Penguin, or is it the Kenner version? And I realized, oh, it might not be that obvious to a lot of people which one is which if they didn't grow up with either of them. And while I was very aware of the Kenner Superpowers version because we had some Superpowers figures growing up, we never had Penguin, but I was aware of it. We had the Toy Biz version of Penguin from 1989. And all of those Toy Biz figures, Superman, Flash, Wonder Woman, Penguin, they're all very Superpowers-y. There are certain differences in the molds, but not enough where you don't go, I think they just used the Kenner molds on those. But the Penguin figure in particular might have the most quirky and interesting history of all the Kenner Superpowers figures that transitioned over to Toy Biz. Let me walk you through it. The Kenner Superpowers Penguin figure is actually quite easy to distinguish visually from the Toy Biz variants right at a glance. For one, he doesn't have a painted pupil on the eye without the monocle. And two, he doesn't actually have pins in his knees. He has pinless knee joints. But the biggest tell, if he still has his accessories, is that the Kenner Superpowers Penguin has an extending sword that comes out of his umbrella. It's like a brown spike attached to a brown handle. The Kenner Superpowers Penguin is the only version of the figure that has a brown umbrella handle. A few years after this, in the summer of 1989, when Tim Burton's Batman came out, Toy Biz got the license for DC for a brief moment. And while they were making the movie Batman figures, they also decided to bolster that line with a generic range of DC superheroes figures. And they clearly used the Kenner Superpowers molds and put their own touches on them. One of these was the Penguin, and you can immediately see he is very similar to the Superpowers figure at a glance. But when you really look at it, he's not that similar at all. For one, he has a painted eye that doesn't have the monocle on it, so the pupil on the eye without the monocle is painted, it's detailed, unlike the Kenner version which just left it blank in the sculpt. Additionally, he has metal pins in his knees, which all the Toy Biz superheroes figures did, which really make the Toy Biz versions of these figures look cheaper and clunkier than the original Kenner versions. But the biggest change Toy Biz made was to the umbrella accessory. Unlike the extending sword in the original Kenner version, the Toy Biz version now has a yellow plastic handle and it shoots a missile out of the center of the umbrella. The other notable difference from the Kenner Superpowers Penguin is that the Toy Biz Penguin did not have coattails. The Kenner original Penguin had removable coattails that plugged into his back via 2 pins. The Toy Biz version of Penguin deletes this and fills in those holes, leaving him with a shorter finished jacket hem. When my brother and I picked these up mere weeks after their release in the summer of '89, the Penguin we got had a very short missile, just under an inch long. Despite our general ability at that time to not lose accessories, eventually that missile did get lost. However, a few years ago, I decided to pick up a mint carded example of that Penguin to have because he was one of our childhood toys and I wanted a complete example again. And there, right inside the bubble, even though it's been dislodged from its original storage location, you can plainly see the short missile laying there that was included with my childhood figure. Well, apparently very quickly after this figure's release, there were complaints that that missile was a choking hazard. We didn't know this as kids at the time, I've only found out about that later. But Toy Biz clearly decided they were going to try and revise this, and so there was a second variant of their version of Penguin to come out, which has a very long missile. This missile no longer has the tapered point on the end, and it looks ridiculous sticking out of that umbrella.
Wow, it's so big.
Whether this was always a stopgap measure by Toy Biz and they always planned to do something else, or if they just decided that looks too stupid to continue with, they revised Penguin a third time. This version now has a much taller umbrella because Toy Biz decided to make the missile the entire canopy. But in doing so, it seems that Toy Biz decided on one last major revision to their version of Penguin. They brought back the coattails. I've looked at a lot of photos of carded versions of Toy Biz Penguin, all 3 variants. And the only version that seems to have the removable coattails is the third one, where the entire umbrella is the missile. Why Toy Biz decided to bring the coattails back so late in the game is a mystery to me. Maybe they thought that the full umbrella missile didn't provide as much value, and so they wanted the figure to look better. Or maybe they always planned to integrate the coattails and couldn't get it done when the figures were first launched. Who knows? We'll probably never know the answer to it. But from what I can tell, the coattails only come with the third and final version of Penguin. But that's the final version for Toy Biz. Kenner got the license back for Batman a year later, and then in 1992, a little film called Batman Returns came out, with the Penguin being one of the main villains.
You don't really think you'll win, do you?
In a strange cost-cutting move, though, while they made Catwoman a brand new figure with her own sculpt accurate to Michelle Pfeiffer, they did not make a figure of Penguin as he was portrayed by Danny DeVito. Instead, they went back to their Superpowers Penguin mold, but instead of the purple and blue suit, they made the suit entirely black with a red bow tie. And also, as was Kenner's habit around this time in the early 90s when they were reissuing molds, they deleted the knee joints from the figure entirely. This was a practice Kenner had already executed on the year before with Robin Hood Prince of Thieves, where a good number of Superpowers figure bodies were repurposed to be the Robin Hood Prince of Thieves cast. You'll notice that Green Arrow is now Robin Hood with a Kevin Costner head on him, and no knee joints. So here we are a year later, and Kenner decides there's no point in making a Danny DeVito version of Penguin. We'll just take our Superpowers one, delete the knee joints, repaint him, and put him back out. Probably the most frustrating thing about this last hurrah for the Kenner Superpowers Penguin is that they completely replace his umbrella accessory with a really stupid one. While yes, the umbrella canopy is still present, they took a cue from Toy Biz and decided to make it a missile projectile. And that attaches to this big clunky box that clips to his arm rather than him having a traditional handle to hold the accessory with. As a secondary function, Penguin now has a huge hole in his back because you can take the umbrella unit and plug it into his back and then have him helicopter away on his umbrella. Not completely dissimilar to how Danny DeVito did it in Batman Returns, but I think we can all agree it's really nothing close. So we end up with a final Penguin figure that obviously isn't the Penguin from Batman Returns, but doesn't have any of the advantages of the original 1985 Kenner Superpowers version. He doesn't have bendable knees, he doesn't have the cool sword umbrella. He's really just a cheap layup of a figure to pad out the line, which Kenner was doing a lot of in the early 90s. Kenner would go on to sculpt a new Penguin figure about a year later when they did the Batman the Animated Series line. Of course, this figure is made to look like the animation from that show and really has no bearing on this conversation. All in all, it's pretty fascinating though to think that this figure of Penguin, who is a character that doesn't have a lot of curb appeal for kids, would end up with 5 distinct variations over 7 years. And that, my friends, is the long, crazy march of the Kenner Superpowers Penguin. Hope you've enjoyed this video, and I'll see you on the next one.